Yes, Sandil, I think we are live now.
A very good afternoon to one and all. My name is region. A warm welcome to one and all gathered over here for this exclusive webinar that NASCOM is partnered with the member company Zuci Systems.
Sandil, there is a bit of a trouble hearing you. We have a bit of trouble hearing you.
Is it okay now?
It is okay, Sandil, but your line is a bit choppy. Please continue. Let's see.
Oh. So we have an interesting topic today. 15 engineering metrics to measure digital readiness. I think which is really need of for the C-suite leaders, and I'm sure we have an interesting experts from this organization who could be able to take us through this presentation on how our C-suite leaders needs to re-identify the engineering metrics that the various organizations needs to actually enhance and work on the business models. I think we have two interesting speakers from the organization. Vasudevan Swaminathan, President and Principal Consultant, Zuci Systems. Vasu comes with around 18 plus years of experience in the industry and has worked with prominent companies like Exaware and Aspire System. Also worked on different domains like delivery, quality, sales, and client services. Now as a President and Chief Consulting for Zuci Systems. Welcome, Vasu, for this enterprising session. I'm looking forward to hear from you. We also have another expert speaker, Mr. Janarthanan Poornavel, has about 17 plus years of experience in the industry and worked with prominent companies like Orangenscape and very passionate in this. He's very passionate in the startup ecosystem and building great web-based products. Welcome you, Jana, for this enterprising session. I think NASCOM is really related to partner with member companies, Zuci Systems, and organize this wonderful webinar for our member and non-member company. Please, we look forward to your wonderful presentation and session. I think we are getting a lot of participation also. I think over to you to Vasudevan and Janarthanan. And towards the end of the session, we'll have the Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandil, for the introduction. Hello, everyone. My name is Vasudevan Swaminathan, in short, Vasu, and I'm the President and Principal at Zuci Systems. I also have with me our Principal Architect, Janarthanan Poornavel, who is on the call. To start off, I just want to make sure that you are all able to hear me loud and clear. I know that we had a little bit of a trouble hearing Sandil. I don't know if it's the conference bridge or it is an audio issue. So I request some of the audience to also put a chat message saying you are able to hear us. In case if you're not able to, we can try and fix it ASAP. All right, thank you. As we get started on this webinar, 15 engineering metrics to measure digital readiness, I want to, at the outset, I just want to, explain a few things. What are these 15 metrics basically? So the way we have tried to approach them is based on our experience and in general looking at organizations that are doing software development for a long time. We have seen that some organizations seem to be doing pretty well in the engineering space. They seem to excel at what they do in terms of engineering, while there are many organizations who try to emulate them but don't get there basically. So when we talk about engineering in general, we refer to some organizations as superior when it comes to engineering. Could be Microsoft or Apple or our own Zoho or Kissflow or anybody for that matter. While at the same time, we don't put every organization in the same league. So we wanted to take an approach in terms of why are these organizations doing engineering so well, while the rest of the organizations are trying to still catch up, and what are the practices that these organizations do so differently, and what kind of metrics are these organizations collecting? So at Zuci Systems also, we have been doing a lot of engineering work, and in the process, we have been collecting metrics beyond the formal ones that we usually refer to as metrics in the context of measurements and metrics when it comes to software engineering and software development. So we found that some organizations that we call as setting the hallmark for engineering are actually collecting metrics that are more or less very different from what formally is being addressed to in the context of metrics actually. So we want to talk about some of that. And we also saw that product management plays a very critical role when it comes to these metrics actually. So the way we are approaching this session today is to talk about 15 metrics that kind of can be used in pockets across CXO teams, product teams, and engineering teams, while at the same time also trying to build the relationship between these metrics across, in the sense, if a CXO team is collecting a metric in terms of how the product quality is, how does that actually translate as a metric in the engineering organization? What kind of metric is engineering looking at, at the same level? Similarly, how is product management looking at it? So we have taken a deeper dive into looking at metrics that are kind of useful across the organization and not restricted to only engineering and delivery. Because most of the times what happens is when we talk about measurements and metrics, we think it is left to the job of quality management systems in the company, where they do annual audits, monthly audits, bi-weekly audits and all that, work with engineering teams, collect metrics, and then present it back to management saying what improvements have happened in the process and things like that. That is not the way we are approaching this session today. So the way we are approaching this session today is to look at metrics from a different standpoint. When there is a lot of collaboration between leadership teams, product management teams, and engineering teams, what kind of metrics do they focus on? And again, at the end of the day, these 15 metrics are a good starting point in terms of measuring your engineering excellence, and they are not the end of it. So you can still go about creating a lot of derivative metrics and things like that. But the ideal world scenario is to look at metrics like what we are going to discuss now and see whether these are being collected by organizations in the path towards measuring engineering excellence. So with that being said, we will get started with what I initially said. Engineering excellence is a rarity, and why is it restricted to some organizations? Let's look at that. So these are some of the names that I believe all of us will agree as great engineering organizations, right? Could be Amazon, Zoho, our own Kissflow, Freshworks, Apple, Google, LinkedIn, Basecamp. All of these organizations in general, most of us would agree as great engineering organizations because we have used their products in some form. We have seen that the products go beyond, the user experience. They provide, impeccable user experience that makes us feel that these organizations are spending a lot of times when it comes to engineering. So just to look at the if you look at these organizations, basically, why is engineering excellence restricted to some of these organizations? Every organization actually should be a Google, every engineering organization should be a LinkedIn, or it should be an Amazon. So why there are only some Amazons, some Google, some Zohos, and some Kissflows of the world? Should every organization not be emulating that? That is the pivotal point from which we started off this conversation, or we wanted to talk about these metrics per se. So what we have come to understand is, when we talk about measuring engineering excellence, most of these organizations do not operate in silos. When I say what I mean by not operating in silos is, about a month back, I had a chance to do a podcast with Mr. Sridhar Vembu of Zoho. And I very vividly remember Mr. Sridhar saying that he still contributes to coding. He still looks at the code. He is writing code. He is doing code reviews. Think about it. An organization of Zoho's size, where the founder CEO is contributing to code quality. He is looking to write code and he is trying to review code that is being written, which means the founder CEO is not sitting at a 50,000 feet level trying to delegate things to people beneath him, saying that hey, I'm going to be focusing on management things while I expect you guys to work on the code part of it. But here the founder CEO says, I'm actually writing code, which shows the level of engineering enthusiasm and excellence that he is focused upon. And I'm pretty sure that's the case with Jeff Bezos or it could be Suresh for Kisflow, or Girish for Freshworks and things like that. And we see that constantly happening in organizations that are focused on engineering excellence. And we feel those organizations that have great levels of engineering excellence are working in a manner where there is collaboration across different teams. They don't seem to be operating in pockets. They seem to have an excellent cross-border collaboration where, you know, CXOs or CEO teams basically come and work with engineering to see what they can do, what ideas they can bring in, take ideas from engineering and take it back to the product vision. Similarly, product teams that are part of these organizations take inputs from leadership team, but they try and make decisions from that. They try and keep expanding on that and try and make decisions basically without waiting for the leadership team to actually make decisions. That is the model ideally every organization should be following. And we feel these organizations are being highlighted as the hallmark of engineering excellence simply because the collaboration that I just spoke about exists in these organizations. But in many cases, where organizations practice software development, engineering excellence seems to be restricted to only engineering and delivery. So the moment when we say measurements, metrics, and things like that, we think it is the job of the engineering team to take care of all those things. And that is where we feel other organizations are not able to catch up with them. So, engineering excellence is becoming a rarity because the aspect of collaboration across multiple teams is not happening the way it is happening in some of these organizations. And that is why the engineering vision is constantly percolated across different teams, and everybody understands their role and what their role means to the overall product quality and things like that. And we believe that is a very significant factor that leads to engineering excellence in organizations. Let's move ahead. What constitutes engineering excellence? So when we talk about these organizations as doing great job in engineering, what basically are the factors, or what are they looking at, or how are they looking at engineering excellence? What are the factors that contribute to engineering excellence? We see that these organizations possess a rare combination of people and process. So they are very pragmatic. They have a great set of people who have an approach or a discipline to software engineering or software development, and they are not willing to take the formal approach to software engineering. They are willing to challenge the process itself. So they could be using an agile or a Kanban and things like that, but they don't restrict necessarily to the typical way in which people do agile. So they try to challenge the process itself, because the people that are part of these organizations come with a very different mindset. And when you get that kind of people and you combine that with process, the way product building happens is significantly different. Secondly, a great delivery team to match the vision of leadership team. Throughout this presentation, throughout this webinar, we will talk more about this basically. But the delivery team, which is at the end of the cycle, or the one that actually participates in the product building exercise, understands the leadership vision completely. Otherwise, such products cannot be built. So how are these organizations percolating this vision to other teams, going beyond leadership? That's another thing. Thirdly, as in the case of any product management, product building, software development effort, you will always stumble upon unknowns and you will always come across obstacles and roadblocks. But given the fact that there is a lot of clarity in vision at the early stage of requirement building and knowledge in dealing with the unknowns, these organizations are able to go past that. So it's not that they have a smooth road ahead of them when it comes to software development, but when they stumble upon a roadblock or an impediment, they are able to think about it. They are able to think about it with clarity, able to brainstorm, collaborate, and see how to overcome that unknown. So these are some of the common best practices that we see in these organizations. And beyond all these three things, there is another fourth one, which is something we think cuts across these areas, which is the product team that these organizations have, or the product teams that these organizations have built. So a great product management team is something these engineering organizations have built, that we saw in the previous slide, whether it is Zoho or whether it is LinkedIn or Google. The kind of product management teams that they have built are, impeccable basically, and they provide a great value and vision to other teams that are surrounding them. So we are going to talk a lot more about product management teams and their role as we move forward with this presentation. But we believe that these are some of the critical factors that constitutes engineering excellence today in these organizations. Let's move ahead. It's a very interesting thing that we observed. A lot of you would be film buffs like us, I believe, and we take a lot of inspiration from movies. And we were wondering, how is this collaboration between leadership team, product management teams, and engineering organizations happen in the software world? And we tried to draw a parallel analogy with respect to filmmaking. So we took some of these movies and tried to see what is the common point that has made these movies as, cult classics and also withstand the test of time. How did the leaders or how did the directors of these movies actually make them as cult classics? Did they actually create them with that vision? Did you start off day one saying, I'm going to make a Raging Bull or I'm going to make a Taxi Driver or a Forrest Gump that would stand for the next 30 years? I don't think that kind of a vision will exist in a director. Of course, they would like to produce a quality movie that would be spoken about. But no one would have thought that these movies can withstand the test of time, which is Raging Bull came out probably before I was born, I think. And I'm talking about Raging Bull today. Taxi Driver probably came about 2 years before I was born. I'm talking about it today. Seven Samurai, many years ahead of my birth, and I'm still talking about it today. Either the Vicky Donor, Masan, Forrest Gump, Roja, these are probably contemporary movies for me. What is the common thread between them? So we tried to draw an analogy of product management, software development with the entertainment connection, basically. What we came to realize was these movies had great screenplay writers collaborating with great directors. And if you were to apply that analogy, for example, in the software world, the leadership team is the director. The product management team is the screenplay writing team. And then you have the cast and crew, which is the engineering/delivery organization. If every member, starting from the leadership team to the product management team to the engineering organization, do not have clarity on what they are doing, then the outcome is not going to be great. And we took inspiration from these movies and figured out that the simple collaboration, the act of collaboration that these directors have had with the screenplay writers has basically made the engineering organization understand the clarity of the product and build it on the same lines as how the director actually envisioned it. You can take any movie for that matter. If you take, let's say, Raging Bull or a Taxi Driver, you will always come back to the collaboration between Paul Schrader, who is the screenplay writer, with Martin Scorsese. If you take Seven Samurai, it is about Akira Kurosawa's collaboration with, Hashimoto and people like that, who are the writers for this movie. If you take Aida Eduthu or Roja, it is Maniratnam's collaboration with writer Sujata in the Tamil industry. And if you take Forrest Gump, it is Eric Roth and Robert Zemeckis. So, like Vicky Donor and Masan, for example, you're looking at names like Juhi Chaturvedi and others who have basically written the script. They are not the directors of this movie, but they have written the screenplay in such a manner that they were able to understand the one-liner vision which the director had and expand based on that. We very firmly believe in order to connect the dots backwards, in order to build a great product, you need a great product management team, which is the screenplay writing team, which is able to understand the director's vision. And as a result of them understanding the director's vision, they are able to expand on each and every scene that the director wants to build into the movie and bring the cast and crew together in terms of how the cast needs to perform the act of doing that scene and how the crew needs to look at it in terms of whether it is the camera angle or with respect to audio recording, sound recording, anything for that matter. So we believe it is a combination of these factors that makes the quality of these films so memorable and withstand the test of time. So we have tried to apply this analogy to software development. So for example, if software products or software development were to be done this way, like these movies, what are the metrics that we would focus upon? What are the metrics that we would look at? They would be very different from what we formally refer to in the context of metrics, isn't it? For example, how would Martin Scorsese measure engineering excellence? In this case, it is not engineering excellence. How would Martin Scorsese measure the excellence that goes into the filmmaking of Raging Bull as it is in production? If he is building a minimum viable product for a moment, if Raging Bull is the minimum viable product that needs to come out in a period of 90 days, it means the screenplay has taken about 18 months time. For example, Eric Roth took about 12 to 18 months time to write the screenplay for Forrest Gump, but the actual production of Forrest Gump would have taken only 6 months time, which means the vision that the director had has been rehashed, thought through, analyzed, discussed, brainstormed multiple times over a period of 18 months in order to look at every possible way in which the movie needs to be built. And that is what we believe is critical to the software development process itself from a product management standpoint. So if software development happens the same way with the approach to which the directors of these movies built it, then we will be looking at a very, very different set of metrics. And those are the 15 metrics that we're going to talk about today. Let's move ahead. So when we talk about metrics in general, we look at things like cyclomatic complexity, kilolines of code, unit testing coverage, or depth-wise coverage of code, breadth-wise coverage of code, and things like that. There is nothing wrong with those metrics, but what is happening today is these metrics basically have become formality rather than actually contributing to the overall product quality improvement. These have become metrics that are used for formality's sake. Every metric is being collected in the name of unit testing code. Metrics are being collected as breadth-wise coverage of code and things like that. But then organizations are talking about technical depth. They are still talking about code refactoring not being done, spaghetti code lying within the system and things like that. So we believe that cyclomatic complexity or unit testing coverage may not give you the exact results or may not give you an accurate picture of your engineering excellence. Rather, the metrics that you see on the screen, the 15 metrics that we wanted to discuss today, are some metrics that can actually give you an accurate picture of your engineering excellence. For example, product management can capture metrics like Tesla score, read score, joy score, which we'll be talking about in detail shortly. So these are metrics that we have collected in the past under these labels that has given us a fair idea of how we are progressing in terms of our engineering. Similarly, engineering organization can look at metrics like score, process score, coverage score, release score, or runtime score, which we believe gives a great snapshot of where our product quality is heading towards. Similarly, CXO can look at metrics. The CXO group can look at metrics like process rigor, agility index, Kaizen score, churn score, and things like that. That can give them a fair idea of how good their customers are receiving the product, how good is the product quality, and things like that. If you actually look at it for a moment, these are not the metrics that we are collecting today, right? Because today, if we go and say CXO group can actually collect a few metrics, then basically that kind of metrics don't even exist today, right? CXO group doesn't have a set of metrics to even go after because we look at metrics only from an engineering standpoint. So today, C-suite doesn't have a set of metrics to even understand how their product is being received by customers or how would they measure their product quality. Similarly, there is no concept of product management metrics today. We usually have a business analyst. The product management role is so diluted that we use business analysts in the place of product management, who keep writing Word documents, use cases, nice UML diagrams and things like that, and say that this is the flow. But when engineering actually starts building it, there is no way for product management to actually measure if engineering is doing the right way because they don't have a set of metrics to go after today. So we at Zuci Systems believed that the formal metrics that we collect today can be helpful undoubtedly, but those metrics alone cannot give you an accurate snapshot of how your engineering excellence is. And that is the reason why today we wanted to talk about these 15 metrics that can actually give you a good snapshot of your engineering excellence. And again, you don't have to restrict yourself to these 15 metrics, but if you are collecting metrics that are similar to what you see here, as we discuss more, you would also be collecting these metrics in a different name. But as far as you are collecting these metrics, under a different name, but as far as you are collecting it, it gives you a good idea of where your engineering excellence is. So as we move forward today, we will talk more about these metrics basically. Let's move ahead, Kirti. One of the things we also saw, we spoke about what constitutes engineering excellence in organizations like LinkedIn, Zoho, and others. One of the things we also saw was There is heavy investment in product management in these organizations, and they convert every data into metric. Again, I have to use the cliched thing that I said. They don't rely on formal metrics like cyclomatic complexity or code coverage and things like that. They try and collect data that is unique to their product and try and see how that data can become a metric over a period of time, and try to present those metrics in a form that is consumable for all the teams that are contributing towards software development or product development. So these are some of the non-evident practices. You may not be able to see them in a visible form in these organizations, but whether it is a LinkedIn or a Google or a Zoho or a Kissflow, anybody, we are pretty confident that these organizations collect metrics that are very, very specific to their product lines, and they collect data and convert them into metrics that gives them an idea of how their product quality is. And they use these metrics as the benchmark to measure across teams, not just with respect to engineering alone. So these are some of the non-evident practices that we have seen within these engineering organizations. I mean, it's not that we have had an opportunity to look at an Apple or a Google in person, but we firmly believe a Tesla or an Apple or a Google are using engineering practices that follow some of these things that we are discussing here. Let's move ahead and talk more. What is happening in software development today? If you look at the way software is being built today, the status quo looks like this. As we all, as I'm talking about this, most of you that are attending this session would get a sense of deja vu, which is, you can somewhere connect with what I'm talking about here. What is happening in software development today is there is a great level of challenge that comes in the story management phase itself. There is minimal requirement clarity, and as a result of which, there is no clear definition of what we want to do in the minimum viable product stage or as part of product enhancements. So we talk about building everything, and in the process, we don't have clarity and we don't know what we want to present to the customer. We can have a great vision, but we don't take a stepwise approach to it. Rather, we either try to put in everything into, a 8 or a 10 sprint bucket, or we try to cut off everything. At the end of the day, either it doesn't meet the user's behavior or user's requirements, or it is too much in, ending up at a stage where you are not able to deliver as promised. And secondly, the story onboarding part, which is the sprint level planning itself, is very, very challenging today. Every time there is a piecemeal approach to the requirement, people look at it in parts, and then they bring in engineering teams to complete. They squeeze the engineering team to complete the sprint without a clear understanding of the requirements. And for the most part, there are three teams that are at loggerheads here. One is the customer's leadership team, then there is a business analyst, and then a delivery team. So if you take a product scenario, it could be the in-house leadership team, then a team of product managers or business analysts, whatever name they are being called as, and then the engineering organization, which is the delivery team here. The challenge with respect to story management and story onboarding goes to a level where there is a constant fight when it comes to the triple constraints of time, quality, and cost. Either the challenge with respect to requirements is hitting the cost, or it is hitting the time, or as a result of both time and cost, it is hitting the quality. As a result of this, there are a number of challenges that we see in software development today. There is constant technical debt that is getting created, and then code cleanup happens all the time because of the requirement changes. Then, or code cleanup doesn't happen, leaving it there in the process of creating new features. And, in the whole scheme of things, everyone, including development, QA, operations, everybody gets hit. And this is what we usually see in product development or software development today. When it comes to building software, this is what we see as a challenge. And I'm pretty sure a lot of you can agree with me or relate to this, especially the story management and the story onboarding part. Unless and until this part is very clear, there is no point in blaming engineering for the mishaps that is happening. But that is what we are doing today. We blame engineering, saying that they are creating technical debt and they are unable to complete the project on time. They are not able to build, engineering excellence as they build these products. But the real challenge is not in engineering. The real challenge lies in the way we are dealing with story management and story onboarding today. So how are these organizations that we spoke about earlier addressing this particular thing? And that is probably one of the reasons why they seem to be doing great work in engineering. So let's look at how the other organizations, or how the organizations that we spoke about earlier, are addressing this challenge that is happening in many organizations today. The curious case of product management. This is exactly the area where a Kislo or a Zoho or a Google or a LinkedIn is spending a lot of time today. The way they build product management teams, the way they hire product managers, we believe is making a difference to the way they are building products. Today, what is happening is business analysts or subject matter experts come with some level of domain expertise, and that is definitely needed. We are not against that. But these subject matter experts do not have an overall idea or a 360-degree view of what is happening on other sides of the organization. That is where the biggest difference is. So typically, when you build a software today, we bring in subject matter experts or business analysts who come in with experience in insurance or banking or healthcare and things like that. But they have not done any kind of coding, or they have not been part of they have not been part of customer support, or they have not been part of QA, or they have not been part of any engineering aspect per se. They come in with domain expertise, which is definitely needed. But the way today a LinkedIn or a Google or an Apple or a Tesla is building the product management team is, they bring in product managers who have spent a few years on all aspects. That means these product managers have done coding for 2 to 3 years time, and these product managers have spent some time in customer support. These product managers have spent time in testing the product. These product managers also carry some level of domain experience, and that is why if you look at product building in a Tesla, it is very different from what other organizations are doing. So how come Elon Musk, who graduated in physics or in some form of engineering, is able to build product in every sphere? For example, starting with financial domain, where he built something that eventually got sold to PayPal, to Tesla, to SpaceX, and everything. Is he knowledgeable on all these areas? No. But he has a great vision in terms of what he wants to build when it comes to product. And he hires people who have versatile experience in building it. And that is why, if you look at how Elon Musk is working backwards, you can see that he has a great vision to build Model 3 of Tesla. But that is not what he gets started with. He starts off with a Roadster. He does a Model S. But constantly in his mind, he has a vision to build Model 3, which is basically the electric version, or an affluent version of the electric version of the car, basically. While all other organizations such as a Toyota or a Honda might say building an electric car could be challenging, Musk sees the opportunity there. He sees the vision there, and then he knows how to build that vision. While every other organization says that electric cars cannot happen, but he sees an opportunity, and irrespective of whether it is going to be successful or it is going to fail, he wants to give an attempt at it. And when he wants to give it an attempt, he basically has a vision in terms of how he wants to build Model 3. But he doesn't get to Model 3 directly. He starts off with a Roadster, he goes to a Model S, and then makes incremental changes, but with very clear clarity in terms of what he wants from the product. And that is the way he's building the product today. He's working backwards in terms of building the product. And that is where product management teams play a very, very critical role. And Elon Musk is not, staying away from what engineering or product team is doing. At one point of time, he's acting as part of the CXO suite. At one point of time, he's part of the product management group. And at another point of time, he's part of the engineering group. So which again goes back to the point that I said earlier. In my podcast, Sridhar Vembu said he's writing code. Probably today, Elon Musk is not launching rockets, but he knows what to do. He knows what his engineering should do when it comes to rocket launching. So if there is a piece of, feature in the rocket launching process that the engineering has a challenge in terms of understanding, Elon Musk can wear the hat of a product manager and explain to engineering as to how the feature needs to be built. And we believe that is significantly important for a founder CEO, or for anybody that is building a product, where they should be able to wear multiple hats. And particularly, in order to wear that hat, you need to have cross-functional experience, or a combination of techno and commercial experience. And that is where product management to, product management group plays a very, very vital role, and they need to bring in an experience that comes from coding, some level of technical proficiency, some level of project management, product management efficiency, and also some level of business experience, domain experience in everything. And we firmly believe that organizations that are excelling in the engineering culture or engineering process today bring these kind of product managers to the table. And we believe that is the reason why they are successful. And to wrap up this slide, we recently came across a quote we thought is very important when we talk about product management. Product managers are responsible for making decisions. Business analysts are responsible for making sure decisions get made. So when we start software development as an effort, or when we start product development as an effort, it is important to hire product managers who are responsible for making decisions, which means that it goes back to the screenplay writing that we said. You can take the director's vision, but you should be able to expand on it, make your own assumptions, make a few failures here and there, but the ownership is with you and the decision making is with you. So screenplay writers don't go back to the director and say, I don't know what to do here, tell me what to do. Rather, they collaborate very clearly with directors, which is the leadership team when it comes to software development. So there is a lot of back and forth that needs to happen between product management and leadership teams that will help in building great products. And that is what we are talking about here. And the metrics that we are going to talk about shortly will tell us how we measure the quality of the product, and in the process, how do we measure engineering excellence? Let's move ahead. So in an ideal world scenario, we are looking at building products as or building software in the following process, or in the way we have described it in the current slide. So we have the customer leadership team, or call it as the product owners, or call it as the internal leadership team. Then we have product management, and then we have delivery teams. So if we build software the way we are looking at it on the screen, then the challenge that we saw earlier, which is the status quo in terms of the current challenges on story management, onboarding, and all that, can be addressed to a large extent. Because when leadership team says that we want to build so and so product, then product management does a lot of homework in terms of what challenges they foresee, what is possible, what limitations are there, and what can actually be delivered. And in the whole process, they clear the storyboard management part of it and tell leadership teams that this is the cost it would take to launch the product, and this is the budget it would take, or this is the time it would take. And that gives a lot of clarity to leadership on how to move forward. Currently, leadership have a budget in mind and they get started, but eventually, as they get their hands dirty, as they dig in more, they figure out that they did not estimate the budget properly or the time properly. But if software development happens the way we have described here, product management teams can give a lot more clarity to leadership teams in terms of what story management is all about, how the storyboarding is going to happen, and how that is going to impact the costing and things like that. And similarly, with that level of clarity being on the product management group, they are able to translate those requirements to delivery or engineering organizations in terms of what needs to happen in every sprint, what is the story that they are going to onboard, if the story has all the clarity needed, what are all the different integrations that needs to happen into the story, have they done all the homework that is needed in order to cover those integrations, what open challenges are there, what open risks are there, how to address them, and everything. That gives engineering a lot of clarity in terms of what they can do versus what they need and things like that. And it helps in easy sprint management. And in the whole process, again, it makes life easier for engineering. That includes development, QA, operations, everybody, because there is a lot of clarity ahead of time as a result of product management playing the role of decision making and playing the role of reviewing the requirements in detail and giving clarity to all sides. So with that being said, we'll once again go back and talk about the 15 metrics that we wanted to discuss. So based on the conversation we have had so far, you can see that the metrics that we wanted to discuss are more from a software development standpoint, not in its generic sense or not in the sense of what we're doing formally today. But if we were to set up something like this, if there is enough clarity between leadership, product management, and engineering, then the kind of metrics that we are talking about are very, very different from what we today capture in systems like JUnit, NUnit, Jira, and things like that. Again, As I said earlier, not that these are going to be used, not that these are going to be thrown away. These metrics that we are capturing in code coverage and things like that can be more complementary rather than being the only source of how we judge or how we measure engineering excellence. Let's move forward from here. I would invite Jana now to talk about these metrics in detail, give us an idea of what these metrics mean. And the next few slides, we are going to talk about the kind of metrics that would be available in an ideal collaboration world that we have discussed so far, and what are the data sources for these metrics and things like that. So I invite Jana to talk more about product management metrics, CXO metrics, and engineering metrics, and talk about the sources of these metrics and why we think these are the metrics that we should look at when it comes to measuring engineering performance and engineering excellence. Jana, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vasu. I'll try to match the intensity with which you have put forth the case that we have been slogging for quite some time. So, as Vasu was saying on multiple occasions, what I would like to recollect as we are going through the product management metrics is software development in general, to be specific, product development too, right in the beginning, especially when it is an idea inside the founder's brain, it actually starts as an unscalable work. There is a great deal of thought churn, if I may say so, that happens inside his or her brain. And this unscalable work, unless and otherwise, if it is not properly articulated and then presented to someone who is an engineer, we always have come out with this mismatch, and there is this loss of signal and noises too included, that kind of ends up with so much of parody that we have seen in Dilbert and also in our experience. So it is as was stressed before, it is very important for us to acknowledge the role of the product manager. If I have to borrow back the screenplay movie analogy, it is absolutely important to have a bounded script. Now, when it comes to a movie, the bounded script basically has clarity in terms of what the movie should stand for, right from the start all the way till the end. Would we be able to do that for a software that would span across a million lines of code? Maybe not, but that is not a reason that you should not have a bounded script, at least for a few iterations or at least for a few milestones. So as we have a bounded script for a movie, it is also important to have clarity in terms of where do you want to go, that is written, that is drawn, that is verbalized, that is articulated. Sometimes, if it makes sense, also have video that talks about what kind of vision the leadership team has, and also present that in a sense where the rest of the teams can understand. So bounded script here is equal to storyboard. So the reason why I brought this observation is such unscalable work needs at some point in time to become efficient to be managed. And it is the responsibility of the product management team to see wherever possible, convert this unscalable work into scalable work, or at least have some sort of a metric to track this sort of an important work. It's such an important aspect of the learning that we have so far. And that's the reason why we decided to present the need to have product management right in the beginning when we talk about engineering metrics. That's an important aspect that I want to touch upon that was already brought forth to your notice. The reason why it is important to have these metrics put in place is this is not a job of taking the one-liner and then giving it to Steve Wozniak, and Steve Wozniak, being Steve Wozniak, gets to build the product. That is not how things work. We won't be able to emulate what Woz and Jobs did for all our organizations, which means it requires some level of personal discipline, focus, and most importantly, process that we should be following to get this done. So in a job where you have to have the clarity of looking forward, provide that clarity in written words and diagrams as much as possible, it is important for you to have metrics. And what we have tried to present here are our own version of these metrics, which we think have kind of helped us to track the progress, to make sure that if we have done our job right, and also to make sure that we hold ourselves accountable if we have, messed things up. Now, these 5 metrics that you get to see here, in some fashion or the other, has been a bit of a help for us in the last, 2 or 3 years in making sure that whatever service engagement that we get into, where we need to build an MVP, if we have to get to act as product managers, or if we have product managers on the other side, we at least try to use these 5 metrics to track the kind of discipline that is needed to make sure that we have got enough context before we get into the delivery team and present what they should be doing. So these names that we have here have some sort of a background and some sort of an inspiration. So let's say, for example, if you take Tesla, it's a score that we track to make sure that we have an idea in terms of how many storyboards we actually have before we actually start the delivery work. Now, this is actually going to become not just a singular value. It is going to continuously change, and we have to have the knack to also track the change. And that's what Tesla score means. Now, the reason why we made this Tesla is to make it, to honor what Elon was able to do on Tesla in terms of having clarity in terms of where he wanted to go, but had the capacity to work backwards. That's the reason why we named the metric that kind of helps you to track the kind of traction you have for storyboards as Tesla score. What do we mean by the Read score? There is this famous book by the name Project Phoenix, and you get to have one of the protagonists by the name Eric Reed, who basically helps a brick and mortar company embrace continuous integration, embrace digital transformation. And what he basically did to help the CEO of the company is to see how he can continuously re-articulate the vision with which the organization is supposed to move forward. If we need to kind of take that and then see how we can fit inside the product management standpoint, not every requirement that you get to present as a storyboard would stay as is. Sometimes it works as a fantastic asset, which doesn't have its design change from 1969 till now, but it doesn't work like that. We always get to have to iterate. And how do we disciplinely, with a lot of discipline, go through that iteration? It's a sort of a continuous integration, even for product management. We wanted to also track that particular metric. Hence, we coined that as, the Read score. What do we mean by earnest score? The name kind of is a giveaway. How much text the product managers end up writing that is actually not present part of the PRD, that is not actually present part of the storyboard? How much content that is inspiring? How much content is a blog? How much of that is an email response to somebody who is part of the marketing team, which is also, by the way, CC to the engineering manager? These are also some sort of a metric that we get to track. If there is no such articulation that happens, there is something seriously wrong. And we have seen this happen time and again, because the product management basically verbally communicates what they want and kind of ends up kind of leaving these things left for assumption. Product managers always err on the side of stating the obvious, even if they end up being so obvious. It's absolutely okay, but we want to have content that represents the kind of clarity that the product manager has. Hence, we wanted to honor Ernest Hemingway. Hence, the score is called the Ernest score. The Joy score. Not all products that we have built, that we have helped build, have only storyboards, which is a combination of text and image. We've always seen occasions where the product for which we kind of helped, or the products that we have built, have got the need to expose REST APIs. Now, we have always seen a lot of noise happen around this, but we have made it very clear that it is the responsibility of the product manager to be very clear in articulating how would he want to expose the REST API, or how would he want the delivery team to consume a particular third-party REST API. We have squarely made this the responsibility of the product manager and not the delivery manager. Hence, we wanted to honor Bill Joy, the brain behind Sun's emergence, and that's what that particular score represents. And we kind of made sure that we stay humble, and we have used our company's name as a Z score, the Zuci score, and that score means that if there is a screw up, if there is some gap, we have always seen that happen. The leadership team gets to verbally communicate what they want part of a particular MVP to the product management. the product management, either they were sleeping in their seat or because of some other reason, gets not to introduce that part of an MVP, and customer gets to experience the product, and they get dispute back on you, and you get to understand that you have messed it up, and we get to track that too as Z-score. At least at this point in time, these are all the scores that we have been putting to use, and in a way they have kind of helped us to do a proper soul searching. And this is what we do specifically with respect to product management, to track the health of the project, the health of the product as it moves through multiple milestones. Kirti, let's move on to the next slide. This slide, I don't want to spend a lot of time, we don't have a lot of time, talks about two different kind of data sources from which you actually get to track product management success. Now, what I want to make very clear here is there are two kinds of metrics the product management would have to track. One kind of metric is specifically meant to track the success of the product in lieu with the customer's experience. Now, for that, there are formal tools available, and you can track metrics like churn, MRR, customer acquisition cost, lifetime value of the customer, so on and so forth. And you got great products like Gainsight, Totango, I forgot the name, Churn Zero, and even you could put Google Analytics to use, and you can also have your own way to measure how much the product is being a great success. But this is not the kind of metric that we track. Now we are more engineering focused, and the kind of metric that we track basically requires us at this point in time manually go to Confluence, Basecamp, WordPress, the kind of images that we have created through Adobe Illustrator, Google Draw, Word documents, to make sure that we get to have some traction on the storyboard, which is where read score and Tesla score come in. If you want to go find out how much time have you spent in terms of getting this all done, we get to go to Trello, we get to go to Asana, we get to go to whatever our customer has as a project management tool, and gather metrics over there. That is where the project management landscape comes in, and this landscape helps us to track the read score and the Z-score too. From an information landscape, we get to kind of use whatever blogs that you have written, whatever videos that you have pushed, to kind of again come back and then help to earn a score. So these are all scores, these are all the data sources that we get to use right now. Unfortunately, we don't have a formal tool, and for the audiences, we think there is a possibility of rebuilding a product, or you building a product to track these kind of metrics. Right now we get to do this manually, and it's actually a pain in the backside, but nevertheless we need to track them so that we don't be slouches in terms of tracking whatever work that we need to do with respect to product management. Kirti, let's move on to the next slide. Before we get into the delivery team, one important takeaway that I would want to pass on with respect to product management is this. Time and again, what we have seen is almost all CEOs whom we have quoted to be great product managers, be it Suresh, be it Webu, be it Elon, Jobs. They not only have the capacity to be great CEOs, they have time and again proven their work as product managers across all the product lines. And likewise, we have also seen great product managers become great CEOs for the product line that they own. And now I have my personal friends, be it Dinesh, who heads the product for Kislo. What I have seen, be it our own internal champions, what they have time and again proven is they have got phenomenal stake in what they believe as their responsibility in taking the product to closure. So this is something that I wanted to send as a final product management. We focus on the metrics that we kind of track for the engineering team. These metrics that you have here are not the usual metrics that you might have seen, come out of SonarQube, come out of Gitprime. But what we believe in is it is important for us to combine what you would get out of SonarQube, what you might get out of a Gitprime. In addition to that, you may also have your own metrics that you need to track as a delivery team that would give you the capability to track how good you're doing, how good you're faring in comparison with the product management team. The score. This is where we get to have the likes of the metrics that you would see in SonarQube being tracked. But we have a different take on that. For example, our philosophy is this. It is based on the experience that we have, which is If you want to track the score metrics, the simple philosophy is make sure that your metrics track how many number of class fields that you have. More number of class fields you have, for the lines of code that you have, you're better. Now, lesser number of class fields, a lot of lines is something that we shy away. Why do we want to do that? What we have seen happen is it is just not about your ability to maintain the code. If you got more classes and lesser number of lines for more classes and more methods, what also in turn happens is if you have such sort of a code base, the opportunities are endless. So if I may quote this, if you have got less number of lines in code, your JVM has the capacity to take that method, hotspot it, and then keep that code right closer to the processor in the L1 and L2 cache. Now, this is just not the benefit that you get in terms of maintenance, but you also have the dual benefit of getting insane amount of performance. So our score metrics is a focus in terms of such real-world experiences, and that is what we track. What do we mean by coverage score? We not only track the number of test cases that we have, but we also try our best to track the breakpoints that every single engineer kind of uses part of their IDE that they use to go through the debug path, and also see how that particular debug path grows over a period of time for every single release. Now, this is something that we have problems because we have to write plugins for the IDE, both for IDEA and Eclipse. We try to do a good job at it, and we are not doing a great job at it, but this is something that we also track, because that's what to us means in terms of how good we guarantee coverage. That's what we try to do when it comes to stuff like coverage. What does that we mean as release score? For us, because of the fact that we use Git, there are developer branches and there are release branches. It is a big no for us if some engineer decides to commit a code set without an elaborate piece of comment inside Git Prime. This is something that we can only react to, and that's the reason why we want to track this as a score. And this particular release score is bad, specifically with respect to a release branch. We do definitely get to talk to the particular team and then see how we can help them to make sure that they get to leave the Bugzilla URL, they get to leave the Jira URL for the codes that they specifically check in to fix a particular bug or fix a particular feature. That is how we take care of our release scores. What do we mean by process score? Almost every bug that you get to fix, every enhancement that you do, none of us can do that without going to Google. None of us, in fact, can do that without going to Stack Overflow. And there is nothing wrong about that. What we do is we have tried to enforce people leave such information as a breadcrumb within the code. For us, code is no more some ASCII file. It has become some sort of a data store. And we get to also track this information and ensure that every time when you get to fix a bug, every time when you get to add a feature, we expect our engineers to leave the Stack Overflow URL, leave the Google search URL, so that we can go back to that content by the time when we do the review and confirm also as a proxy that whatever that the engineering team has done is indeed the right thing to do. Because if they have done something that is a best practice, we don't know why go really spend time, have this become a debate and whatnot, and then make this become a personality issue. This is what we try to do on the engineering side. And like how we had data sources from which we collected the engineering metrics, we also have data sources. Kirti, can you go to the next slide? This is fairly comprehensive, universe. We are trying to do our best job, but the idea is you need to see how you can talk to the IDE. You need to see how you can talk to the console terminal. Maybe you should go ahead and then tweak your BioBo terminal so that you can gain information. See how you can talk to your Trello systems. See how you can talk to your process systems. Collect as much information as possible from these data sources to derive and discern the kind of metric cohorts that we kind of shown you in the previous slide. Let's move on to the next set of metrics, Keith. What we have done is the metrics that you had in the product management side and the metrics that you have on the engineering management side, we have tried to collate in our own way without being, a bunch of dumb folks, because it is just not about, doing some aggregate. It is just not going to be that. It is not that linear. There is some amount of non-linearity to it. There is some amount of quadraticness, if I may say, to this. We have tried our best to form equations, and each of these metrics is a culmination of what those two metric cohorts stand for. And we try to present these metrics to our C-suite team so that they get to understand, like, for example, how you would understand your balance sheet as a brick and mortar. You get to understand your engineering landscape and product management landscape through these 5 metrics. There is one singular metrics, at least we expect them to follow, which is what we call as a Kaizen score. Kaizen here means that you practice. What do we mean by practice here? We kind of got inspired by Angela Duckworth's deliberate practice. If you do whatever you do as a deliberate practice, there is a very high chance that you're doing whatever you're doing really good. And this is one single score, which is like what a stock option would have as that score. If you could track that to closure, you'd have some idea in terms of are you doing your job right across the delivery team and also across a product management team. I don't want to dive deep into these metrics because they would take time. These 2 metrics, the one that you see on the left-hand side, the one that you get to see on the right-hand side, are in a way positive score and negative score. If you follow your processes right, the positive score is a process rigor. If you get to do whatever you do without a lot of time being spent in iterations, you're really agile. That becomes a positive score. You don't get to really maintain your Maven repository right, and so on and so forth. I'm just trivializing it so that you get to understand what we're talking about here. Then you got your third-party chain is not good. It becomes a negative score. And the churn score talks about how much time you really spend fixing things over and over again, how much of regression issues you have. So the right side becomes negative, the left side becomes positive. In a simple manner, if A minus B is going to give you Kaizen score, and if Kaizen score can remain positive, then I think you're doing something healthy. Last but not the least, all these 3 different cohorts, as Vasu mentioned, it is not about identifying the metrics. It's about tracking these metrics at multiple levels. Do you track these metrics as a singular value at a particular point in time? Do they have a positive value or do they have a negative value? Are they supposed to be positive? Are they supposed to be negative? You need to know that. And then you need to understand how a particular metric for a particular module or for a particular person or for a particular team or for a particular storyboard fares compared to the rest of the storyboards. You get to compare and contrast. The first one, if it is a label, the second one becomes either a pie chart or a donut chart or as a tree map, where you get to kind of compare what is really happening across the landscape. That is level 2. Level 3, how do you track these metrics over a period of a time? Some kind of metrics need to go upwards, if not flatline. Some kind of metrics need to go downward, if not flatline. But the most important thing is you having the capacity to have these levels, even if you have not done a good job in terms of defining the metrics. But if you have done a good job in terms of at least tracking them, it'll give you some sort of a story to follow through so that as an organization, you can do a good job. With that, Vasu, I'll stop and I'll pass the baton to you. And if there are any questions, we can take them up. Thank you.
Thank you, Jana. I think we are almost towards the end of this. So again, C-suite metrics, the inputs come from both engineering and the product metrics, as you can see in the next slide. So the metrics that we spoke about earlier for engineering and product management becomes the input for C-suite. We are a couple of minutes above time actually, but let me wrap up this session by taking one more minute, and then I saw a couple of questions, but to wrap up, somebody also asked in the question now that there is no objectivity to these metrics, and without objective, how do you even track this? That's precisely why we said in the beginning of the session that these are metrics that we find useful for our organization. We don't want to put how am I getting a 4 out of 5 for this? That is not the way we are looking at it. As far as we have a way to measure these, as far as we have a way to track this, it gives us a fair idea of how our engineering is. And that is precisely why we wanted to talk about these metrics, and that's why we took the scenario of the movie story also. As a movie is under production, there is no score to say how well it is doing, but there is a way by which the team basically analyzes and keeps track of how well it is getting built. That's precisely what it is about, these metrics. So you can still get to a score, you can track it and things like that, but you don't want to basically say, every time out of 5 I'm getting 4.5 for runtime score, so I'm doing good. So if that is the kind of objectivity that we are looking at, unfortunately these metrics are not of that kind actually. However, for different organizations, these metrics can provide different inputs in terms of how it is useful and how it helps them to benchmark and track their performance and excellence and everything. So I just wanted to give it as an answer since I saw that as a question coming up. But to wrap up this session, This is a journey again. This is not a destination. This is a journey. So as you move forward, as you start collecting this, you might make some changes here and there. You will still look at ways to improve this. You will try and do more collaboration across different teams and things like that. So we are not presenting these metrics as a destination saying if you collect this 15, you are doing great in engineering. That's again something I mentioned during the beginning of this conversation. These 15 metrics are a great starting point, and as opposed to any other metric that you are collecting from an engineering standpoint, these metrics give you an overall idea of how your different teams are doing, not just your engineering. So rather than entrusting engineering with the responsibility of taking care of your product quality, we believe every team, that's why Edward Deming said quality is everyone's responsibility. If you had to take that particular statement, then the whole point is different teams contributing to the overall quality aspect is what we are talking about here, and hence engineering excellence becomes a continuous journey and not a destination in itself. So if product management, C-suite, delivery, each one of them can track product quality from their own point of view without trying to understand how engineering is doing, then that itself is a great way to move ahead and benchmark this progress. I will stop there. I know that we are 5 minutes over time. Sorry about that. But we would like to thank NASSCOM for this opportunity, and Sendil, thank you so much for providing us with this opportunity. With that, we come to the end of this session. We would like to thank all the attendees. And Sendil, any words that you have, please go
ahead. Thank you, Vasu and Jana, for the very insightful session. Hope you can hear me.
Yes.
Yes, yeah.
That was a very, very insightful session. Though there are I think the slides were not displaying completely. I think that could be a requirement from any of the participants. Not sure if this is a shareable deck or it could be to be sent to the participants after the program. Maybe you can check and let us know. I think that was really a great program from both of you. We have some of the questions actually posted by our attendees. I think we can pick up those questions and we can actually discuss with. I think the first question is on what is the score measurement for each of them. Metrics have to be objective. It's actually to Vasu from Jitendra. Yeah, you can go ahead, Vasu. Probably, I think to make it a little more very to cut short the time, you can actually pick up these questions which is being there according to the panelists. Yeah.
Sure, Sendil. I just thought I answered Jitendra's question because I saw that coming up. So okay, that's why I said objectivity gets built over time, Jitendra. On day one, I don't think these metrics will give you a score saying that, out of 5, if you score 4 for release management or release process score, you are doing fine. That's not the way we are looking at it. It gets built over a period of time. Yes, objectivity is very important. Metrics have to be objective, no doubts about it. But you don't put a score directly and start measuring them. Rather, you start practicing these metrics, and then over a period of time, you identify what is the right score for you. And that's why Jana mentioned about some areas where it can go positive, some areas where it can go negative, and things like that. So the way you objectively measure these metrics are slightly different from what generally we see in the form of tools that provide these metrics actually, or generally the tool-based metrics that we get are a little different actually. So this is being measured a little differently. So I just wanted to let you know about it, and we can share some insights in terms of how we are doing it today. There was one more question. I'll just take it quickly. Somebody has said it's a great presentation. One thing to add, my query is how far the business analyst will make a better product manager for customer. Bala Bhaskar. Bala Bhaskar, thank you for your appreciation. How far will the business analyst will make a better product manager? It's purely left to the way the individual is, and also left to the way the organization treats them. That's why we said there is a lot of collaboration. There is a lot of vision enhancement that comes from leadership team. So that is why some of these organizations spoke about now, like a Zoho or let's say, I mean, I'm taking Zoho Kistflow again because we are more doing it in the Indian context. But many of these organizations that we just spoke about could have actually kept the role as a business analyst possible, but they would have actually fit in the R&R for a product manager, basically. So when we talk about business analyst, I think we dilute it to a point where we say that their job is to write documentation, their job is to sit in bug triage meetings, their job is to moderate between developers and QA and all that. Product manager description is not alone that they are welcome to do that, but they need to go beyond that. Actually, they need to be able to think about the possibilities of where the product can go, which means that it is like being an editor for a film. The editor is per se not the director, but he needs to have the same acumen as a director. He needs to know where I need to cut this short and where I need to extend this short. In that sense, the editor's role is what we expect from a product manager, which means he needs to have the same acumen of the leadership team. They really need to know where this product can go, what my vision is, and things like that. So it's it all depends on the way you identify this role, how you hire for it, and how you interview for it, and make sure that they bring in that kind of versatility that I mentioned earlier, which means they should have spent a couple of years in coding, they should have spent a couple of years in business domain, they should have spent a couple of years even being on customer support and things like that. That will bring a great flavor to the product manager role. Thank you. One question, Jenna, probably you might want to take this, Jenna. We are talking about BA and product manager. How do we sync between both profiles? As Elon Musk practically, I think a word is missing, but I think John Rex is asking, how do we sync between both profiles as Elon Musk practically did into a system? So, Jenna, if you want to take that up, please.
Maybe I'm opinionated. I think I'll try to be as honest as possible. I don't think words don't matter. If there is a business analyst who can do a great job of making sure that he becomes the conduit between the leadership team and the delivery team, have clarity in terms of how to communicate, make sure that he gets to present the thoughts that come from the LD back to the delivery team, have the ability to understand the technical challenges, present especially when the product is too technical, present also visibility in terms of what is expected from a technical perspective. It's okay if you still want to call him as a business analyst. The most important message that we are trying to pass is the person who is in the middle, who basically gets to be the liaison between the visionaries and the engineers. He needs to understand how to operate and do his job appropriately. If you want to call him as a product manager or a business analyst, I don't think we should shy away from doing that. Hope I've answered that question. There is almost one of the important things that we have presented in our presentation is we are objective in telling that this is a journey, and there is good amount of self-introspection that needs to happen. Be these words, or be the question that Jitendra asked. It is entirely up to us to ensure that you get to find your own Fermi's approximation of what would be objective for you. So let's say, for example, if you take the drag coefficient of the cars that were built in 1930s and 1940s, it was okay to have them at the value of 0.4 or 0.5. But when the Beetle came, it changed the value to be 0.29 or 0.21. I don't exactly remember. And from then onwards, people started thinking, okay, that was a relative measure. There was no objectivity to it. So, having said that example, the point I'm trying to make is, please use what we have presented as a thought to find out how you can fine-tune your own journey, but with the understanding and awareness that the person who's going to be in the middle needs to do more than what he has been historically doing. John, I hope I have answered your question.
Thank you, Jenna. One last question, Raja Nagendra Kumar. I'm not sure if I understood this correctly, my mistake actually, but you were asking what kind of client safety you provided at last mile. Example, if bugs are so much of technical debt. I think the greatest client safety that you can provide is give them an accurate snapshot of where they stand with respect to their delivery. I think a lot of organizations, a lot of vendors don't do that today. So when we talk about client safety is, if I understand your question correctly, you are saying what assurance have you provided to your client in terms of their product quality if you think bugs are so much of technical debt. I think it goes back to the process itself, Raja Nagendra Kumar, because if you continue to have bugs, then basically we are saying that I'm not going to reduce them, which itself is a problem. And if we say the system has been set up in such a way that bugs will keep coming and you have to live amidst that, then we'll have to be fair enough to the client in terms of where the product quality stands. And that means that I can do a risk-based testing and say, I don't think we'll be able to reduce bugs per se because of the way we have set up, because of the way we are set up today. But here is a fair idea of where you stand in terms of your application's risk. When this release goes out to customers, this is my report that basically says what are the potential areas where your customers will get bugs from. So we are already conscious and aware of the fact that bugs are going to come, and here is an idea of where they are going to come. If that level of honesty can be provided in a release report, and that is what the client safety net is all about, I believe. But if your question is slightly different, my apologies for not interpreting it correctly. I'll be happy to take it up offline. You can reach out to us at vasu@zucisystems.com, and I'll be happy to answer that. I think those are the questions that we had. Thank you so much for the questions, everyone.
Vasu, one thing to add to what you said, in our case, the technical debt part, if you need to give the client safety, as you rightly said, provide transparency in terms of metrics. In our specific case, the third-party initial metric, which is supposed to be a negative function, cannot have a positive slope. If it has a climbing positive slope, time and again, what we have seen happen is you don't get to, for example, if you're in the Java world, you don't get to upgrade your map and dependencies. And significant amount of time, what we have seen happen is technical debt gets added, not because the engineer who's working on the actual business logic is messing things up. Messing things up happens because you're not upgrading your third-party libraries. And what happens is if you get to track them as metrics, and if you can also present that to your customer, it's just not your customer. You also get to understand that, okay, this is a negative function. If it is climbing up the slope, there is something that you should be doing on that. I'll stop there, Vasu.
Thank you, Jana. Thank you so much. Thanks, Sindhil. I think we have taken all of the questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Vasu and Jana and the Zuci team for courteously organizing this session along NASSCOM and creating a very, very insightful thought for the members and some of the potential companies. We look forward to working with you, and thank you so much for presenting a very, very delightful session. Thanks to all the panelists. Thanks to all the participants, the delegates who have been part of the session. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We'll share the presentation with you, Sindhil. You can publish it to the attendees. Thank you.
Thank you, Vasu. Thanks.
Bye. Thanks.
Thank you so much, everybody. Appreciate everybody's participation. Bye.
Thanks.